and welcome to the Retirement Wealth Podcast. We're really glad you're tuning in today.
Yeah, it's great to have you with us. You know, one of the biggest concerns for folks planning for retirement is inflation. It's this sneaky force that can really chip away at your savings, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we're all thinking about how our money needs to last, especially with rising costs. So in this episode, we're going to dive into some effective strategies to protect your retirement from inflation.
Exactly. We'll talk about things like diversifying your investments, considering income sources that keep pace with inflation, and even some practical tips to adjust your spending.
Plus, we'll share insights into how you can build a solid financial plan that can withstand those fluctuations in the economy.
And it's all about making sure you feel secure and confident about your future. So let's get into it.
Right. Let's start by discussing.
You know, Emily, one of the biggest reasons why this topic is so crucial right now is because we are seeing a lot of uncertainty in the economy. Inflation rates have really spiked lately, and for those who are planning their retirement, that can feel a bit daunting, right?
Absolutely, David. I mean, just think about it. Many folks are probably counting on their savings to last for 20, 30 years, and if inflation continues to rise, that could seriously erode their purchasing power over time.
Exactly. It's like you might have a certain amount saved, but if prices keep climbing, that nest egg won't stretch as far as they thought. You know, I had a client, let's call her Mary. She was planning on retiring in the next few years, and she was banking on living comfortably on her savings. But with recent inflation trends, she's had to rethink some of those assumptions.
Wow, that's a great point. And I imagine many retirees are feeling that pinch, especially with things like groceries, gas, and even healthcare costs, all going up.
Right. And healthcare is one of the biggest expenses in retirement. It can be staggering. Just this past year, I had a couple, John and Lisa, who really hadn't anticipated how much their medical expenses would rise. They thought they had a solid plan, but as costs increased, it started to put a strain on their overall budget.
That's so relatable. And then there's the volatility in the stock market. That can really shake things up for retirees who are relying on their investments for income.
Definitely. I mean, when the markets dip, it can be really scary for people, especially if they're in the withdrawal phase. I remember a client, Tom, who was withdrawing from his portfolio during a downturn. He felt like he was losing money every time he looked at his statements. It's tough to stay calm in those moments.
Yeah, and that emotional side of financial security can't be underestimated. It affects not just their finances, but their overall peace of mind. I think a lot of people just want to feel secure in their retirement years.
Spot on. And it's not just about the numbers, right? It's about feeling confident in the decisions you're making. Plus, with all the changes to Social Security, many people are wondering if they'll have enough to cover their needs. I've seen a lot of confusion around when to take benefits and how that impacts overall retirement income.
Oh, for sure. And with all that uncertainty, it's easy to feel overwhelmed. But that's why having a solid strategy is so important. You want to have a plan that not only protects against inflation, but also addresses market volatility and tax efficiency.
Exactly. And let's not forget about legacy planning. Many retirees want to leave something behind for their children or grandchildren. But if inflation eats away at their assets, that can become a real challenge.
Right, and I think a lot of people don't realize how interconnected all these factors are. It's like a web. One change in the economy can ripple through their entire retirement plan.
Yes, and that's why we can't take a one-size-fits-all approach. Each person's situation is unique, and understanding the current economic trends is crucial. With interest rates fluctuating, for instance, it can impact everything from mortgage rates to bond yields.
That's a good point. And speaking of trends, I've noticed that more people are talking about alternative investments lately. Things like real estate or even commodities as a hedge against inflation.
Absolutely. Diversifying your portfolio can be a smart move, especially in times like these, but it's essential to do it strategically. Understanding your risk tolerance, your time horizon, and how these investments fit into your overall plan.
And it's not just about investments, right? It's also about the lifestyle choices you make. Some people might consider downsizing their homes or relocating to areas with lower costs of living.
Yes, lifestyle adjustments can make a significant difference. I had a couple who decided to move to a smaller town after retiring, and they found that their expenses dropped dramatically. They were able to stretch their retirement savings much further, which was a huge relief for them.
That's a perfect example of being proactive. It's all about taking control of your financial future and making informed decisions.
Exactly, Emily. It's about being flexible and ready to adapt as circumstances change. And, of course, it's vital to stay informed about any new policies or economic trends that might impact your retirement.
Right. So for those who might be feeling a bit anxious about their retirement plans, what's the best way to start protecting themselves against inflation and market volatility?
Well, it all comes down to having a holistic strategy that considers all these factors. But before we dive into some actionable strategies, I think it's important to emphasize that the first step is really assessing where you currently stand financially and what your goals are.
That makes sense. Understanding your starting point can help guide your decisions moving forward.
Exactly. So let's talk about some of those core strategies that can help individuals safeguard their retirement. So, Emily, let's dive into some practical strategies that can really help protect your retirement savings from inflation.
Absolutely. It's such an important topic. I think a lot of people feel overwhelmed by it, but there are definitely ways to get ahead.
For sure. One of the first things that comes to mind is asset allocation. Making sure your portfolio has the right mix of stocks and bonds can be crucial.
Right. So what's a good rule of thumb for that?
A common guideline is the 70-30th rule. So if you're younger, you might lean more towards 70% stocks and 30% in bonds. As you approach retirement, you might switch that to 60-40ths or even 50-50.
That makes a lot of sense. Stocks generally have the potential for higher returns, which can help outpace inflation, right?
Exactly. Historically, stocks have returned about 7% annually after inflation, while bonds have returned around 3 to 4%. So you really want to keep a healthy portion in stocks, especially when you're still in the accumulation phase.
And that's key, because with inflation hovering around 3 to 4% recently, if your money isn't growing at a rate that beats inflation, you're effectively losing purchasing power.
Right, and speaking of inflation, let's not forget about tax-advantaged accounts like 401ks, IRAs, and Roth IRAs. They can help shield your investments from taxes, which is crucial for long-term growth.
Yeah, those accounts give you a significant advantage. With a traditional 401k, you're investing pre-tax dollars, which can lower your taxable income now.
Exactly. And with a Roth IRA, you pay taxes up front, but then your withdrawals in retirement are tax-free, which can be a huge benefit, especially if you expect to be in a higher tax bracket later on.
Plus, there are no required minimum distributions with a Roth IRA, right? That gives you more flexibility?
Yes, you can let that money grow for as long as you want, which can be a great hedge against inflation. And when it comes to withdrawals in retirement, that's where having a solid strategy really comes into play.
Like the 4% rule?
Exactly. The 4% rule is a popular guideline suggesting you can withdraw 4% of your initial retirement portfolio each year, adjusted for inflation. This approach is based on historical market performance.
So if someone has $1 million saved, they could withdraw about $40,000 in the first year and adjust that amount for inflation each subsequent year?
Right, but it's important to note that this rule isn't foolproof. Market conditions can change, and if you withdraw too much in a down market, it can jeopardize your long-term sustainability.
That's a good point. I've heard some advisors recommend a bucket strategy as an alternative. Can you explain that a bit?
Sure. The bucket strategy involves dividing your assets into different buckets based on when you'll need to access the funds.
Oh, like having one bucket for short-term needs, one for medium-term, and one for long-term growth?
Exactly. For example, you might have one bucket with cash and short-term bonds for immediate needs, say the next 5 years. Then a second bucket with a mix of stocks and bonds for the next 5 to 10 years. And finally, a long-term bucket invested in equities for growth beyond that.
That gives you a great way to manage risk while still allowing for growth.
Right, and it can help you avoid having to sell investments at a loss during a market downturn.
And what about real estate? I know some folks are considering rental properties as a way to generate income during retirement.
Real estate can be a valuable part of a diversified portfolio. It can provide rental income, potential appreciation, and some tax benefits, like depreciation.
I guess the key is to ensure that it aligns with your overall strategy and risk tolerance, right?
Absolutely. And remember, managing real estate requires time and effort, so it's not for everyone.
Plus, there's the whole issue of liquidity. Real estate isn't as easily accessible as stocks or bonds when you need cash.
Right again. You want to strike a balance. And let's not forget about Social Security optimization.
Oh, yes, that's a big one. There are so many strategies to consider, like delaying benefits to increase your monthly payout.
Exactly. For every year you wait past your full retirement age, your benefit can increase by about 8% until age 70.
So, if someone can afford to wait, that could really pay off in the long run.
Definitely. And it's important to factor in your health and life expectancy when deciding when to take those benefits.
And don't forget about spousal benefits. There can be strategies around that as well.
Yes, if one spouse has a significantly higher earning history, the lower earning spouse can benefit from claiming based on the higher earner's record, which can be a game changer.
All of this really boils down to being proactive and having a solid plan in place.
Exactly. And don't overlook tax savings techniques, like tax loss harvesting or even considering how your withdrawals will affect your tax bracket.
Those little details can add up.
They really can. And diversification across different asset classes is crucial for managing risk, especially in a volatile market.
So it's about not putting all your eggs in one basket, so to speak.
Right. You want a mix of equities, bonds, maybe some alternatives like REITs or commodities to hedge against inflation.
And all of this will help create a more resilient retirement plan.
Absolutely. But as we wrap up this section, it's also essential to be aware of common pitfalls that can derail these strategies.
Oh, definitely. I think that's where a lot of people can trip up. Let's dive into that next.
So one of the biggest pitfalls I see is what we call sequence of returns risk. It's basically when you start withdrawing from your retirement accounts during a market downturn, right? It can really mess up your long-term plans.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, if the market's down and you're pulling money out, you're not just losing value. You're also locking in those losses, right?
Exactly. I had a client, let's call him Tom, who retired just before the 2008 financial crisis. He started taking withdrawals from his investments, and, well, his portfolio took a big hit. It really set him back, and he ended up having to delay some of his retirement dreams.
Oof, that's rough. So what could he have done differently?
Well, Tom could have built a strategy that included a cash reserve or some safer investments to draw from during downturns, so he wouldn't have to sell stocks at a loss. It's all about maintaining flexibility in your withdrawals.
That makes a lot of sense. What about taxes? I know that's another area where people often overlook things.
Oh, absolutely. Many retirees underestimate how taxes will affect their withdrawal strategy. I had another client, let's call her Susan, who thought she could just take money out of her 401k without considering the tax implications.
Right! So she withdrew a large sum in 1 year, which pushed her into a higher tax bracket?
Exactly. Susan ended up paying way more in taxes than she planned for, which meant less money for her lifestyle. If she'd spread her withdrawals out over several years, she could have minimized her tax burden.
Wow, that's a big lesson. It's like the hidden cost of not planning for taxes can really sneak up on you.
Definitely. And this gets even trickier when you factor in Social Security. I see a lot of people claiming it too early, thinking they'll get a nice boost, but they don't realize the long-term implications.
Right, because you can actually lose out on a significant amount if you claim early.
Exactly. I had a couple, let's call them Bill and Linda, who decided to claim their Social Security benefits at 62. They thought they'd enjoy their retirement sooner, but they didn't consider how much that would reduce their monthly income for the rest of their lives.
I can see how that could be a huge mistake. I mean, if they had waited even a few years, that would have made a difference in their overall financial health.
Yes, waiting even until full retirement age can lead to a significant increase in benefits, sometimes as much as 30%. It's really worth doing the math to see how waiting could benefit them.
So is there a rule of thumb for when to claim?
Generally, the longer you can wait, the better. If you can afford to, pushing it to age 70 is often ideal for maximizing benefits. But it really depends on individual circumstances, so a personalized plan is key.
Speaking of personalized plans, what about healthcare costs? I mean, those can really catch people off guard, right?
Absolutely. Many retirees underestimate their healthcare expenses. I had a client, let's call her Karen, who thought Medicare would cover everything. She didn't factor in the out-of-pocket costs for medications, specialists, or long-term care.
That's a big oversight. I imagine those costs can add up quickly, especially as you age.
They really do. In fact, studies show that a couple retiring today may need around $300,000 just to cover healthcare costs in retirement. Karen ended up having to dip into her savings much more than she anticipated because she wasn't prepared for those expenses.
Wow, that's eye-opening. So what should people do to avoid underestimating those costs?
Planning is essential. I encourage my clients to research what Medicare covers and to consider supplemental insurance options. Also, it's wise to factor in potential long-term care needs, even if they seem far off.
Yeah, it's better to be safe than sorry. Now, I've also heard about people having poor asset allocations. How does that play into retirement planning?
Poor asset allocation can really derail a retirement plan, especially if someone is too conservative or too aggressive. I had a client, let's call him Mike, who was heavily invested in bonds because he was afraid of stock market volatility.
But bonds don't always provide the growth you need, right?
Exactly. Mike ended up not having enough growth potential in his portfolio, and when inflation hit, his purchasing power took a hit. He could have benefited from a more balanced approach, mixing stocks and bonds to align with his risk tolerance and time horizon.
So it's all about finding that balance, right?
Yes, and regularly reviewing and adjusting your portfolio as you age and as market conditions change is crucial. It's not a set it and forget it situation.
For sure. Are there any red flags that retirees should look out for in their planning?
Definitely. If you're feeling anxious about money or your investments, that's a sign something might be off. Also, if your spending habits change drastically or you find yourself dipping into savings more than expected, those are big red flags.
And I imagine not having a clear plan in place is another warning sign, right?
Absolutely. If your retirement plan feels vague or you're unsure about how to approach withdrawals or investments, it's time to seek guidance.
So how can someone recover if they find themselves in one of these situations?
Well, first, it's important to reassess your overall financial strategy. Working with a financial advisor can help you create a more tailored plan that considers all these factors, like inflation, taxes, healthcare, and asset allocation.
That sounds like a solid step.
It really is. And remember, it's never too late to make adjustments. The key is to stay proactive and keep educating yourself about your options.
Great advice, David. This has been really enlightening, and I think it'll help a lot of folks avoid some common pitfalls.
I hope so. There's so much to consider, but with the right planning, you can enjoy a fulfilling retirement.
Absolutely. Up next, let's talk about some practical steps you can take to secure your retirement in the face of rising costs.
All right, so let's dive into some immediate steps that folks can take right now to protect their retirement from inflation.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Where do we start?
Well, one of the first things I recommend is to take a good look at your portfolio. Review it quarterly, just to make sure it aligns with your risk tolerance and current goals. It's a great habit to get into.
Absolutely, and it doesn't have to be a huge time commitment, right?
Exactly. Just set aside an hour every 3 months. You can use tools from places like Vanguard, Fidelity, or Schwab. They have retirement calculators that can really help you gauge how your investments are keeping up with inflation.
Those calculators can be super handy. I've played around with them myself, and they really break things down well.
They do. And while you're at it, consider running some retirement projections. It's a good way to visualize where you stand and what adjustments you might need to make.
Right, and it can really help you feel more in control of your financial future. What about tax considerations?
Great point. Websites like ssa.gov have resources that can help you understand how Social Security fits into your plan. It's really important to factor that in as you build your retirement strategy.
And speaking of taxes, using tax software can be a game changer for planning. It helps you see how your income might be impacted in retirement, especially with inflation in mind.
Absolutely. And if you're feeling overwhelmed, don't hesitate to seek out a financial planner. They can offer personalized advice tailored to your situation.
Yes, and it's never too late to improve your plan. Even if you're nearing retirement, small adjustments can make a big difference.
Exactly. And habits like regularly checking your portfolio or seeking out professional advice can lead to better long-term results.
So what about some resources? Are there any books or podcasts you'd recommend?
For sure. One book that comes to mind is The Boglehead's Guide to Investing. It's straightforward and offers some solid principles for managing your retirement funds effectively.
I love that one. And what about podcasts?
The Retirement Answer Man is a fantastic option. It gives practical advice and actionable steps that listeners can implement right away.
Those are great suggestions. I think having a mix of resources can keep the planning process engaging.
Definitely. Additionally, consider using financial planning apps that can help you track your expenses and investments. Something like Mint or Personal Capital can provide a clear picture of your financial health.
Yeah, those apps can really simplify budgeting and give you insights you might not have considered before.
And remember, even if you start small, the important thing is to start. Whether it's reviewing your portfolio or reading a book about retirement planning, every little bit helps.
That's such a motivating thought. And I think it's crucial to remind listeners that they're not alone in this journey.
Absolutely. Many people are navigating similar challenges, and there's a wealth of information and community support out there.
So with these tools in your pocket, you're ready to strengthen your retirement plan. Let's recap what we've covered today.
Well, Emily, as we wrap up our discussion on how to protect your retirement from inflation, I think we covered some really important points.
Absolutely, David. One of the big takeaways was the importance of diversifying your investments, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's all about spreading risk, not putting all your eggs in one basket. Stocks, bonds, maybe even some real estate can really help offset inflation impacts.
And we also touched on the significance of having a solid income strategy. Ensuring that your income can keep pace with inflation is crucial.
Right. Whether it's through Social Security, pensions, or other income streams, knowing how to adjust for inflation can make a big difference in your purchasing power later on.
And let's not forget about the emergency fund. Keeping a cash reserve can provide a safety net, especially during those unpredictable times.
Definitely. It gives you peace of mind and flexibility, which is so important in retirement.
So to sum it up, diversifying investments, having a solid income strategy, and maintaining an emergency fund can really help protect your retirement wealth from inflation.
Exactly. And remember, building and protecting your retirement wealth is a journey. It takes time, planning, and sometimes a little adjusting along the way.
Yes, and that's why we're here, to guide you through it. If you found value in today's episode, please like, subscribe, and let us know your biggest takeaway or any questions you might have in the comments.
And if you know someone who's planning for retirement or is already in it, share this episode with them. It could really help.
Next time, we'll dive into retirement planning in your 40s explained, which is such an exciting topic.
It really is. So make sure to tune in for that.
Thanks for joining us today.
We appreciate you listening.
Until next time, take care.